I think we can start. Okay, so welcome everyone. This is the third in our series of weekly webinars, and we have the regular format that we've been going through, where we make a few announcements and highlights at the beginning, and then we're joined by our guest Amy Schultz, who is our resident ecosystem mapping guru. So everyone say hi to Amy, and we'll be turning the webinar over to Amy after our announcements, and she'll be doing a live hands-on overview and some more features on Kumu. So this will be useful for you when you're moving into your further into your project with mapping and reporting and tracking your ecosystem. Okay, so to start up, oops, we'll look at a hair trigger here. So the highlights from last week, and I've put the links from the Workplace site up so that you can click onto Workplace if you're registered. But just a plug for Workplace, of course, this is going to be the place where our community will gather and share information. So if you've received an invitation from Karen Fraser-Middleton, our communications and marketing person, please take care of logging on and getting up to date on Workplace, because you're going to find a lot of cool information there. So this last week saw College of the Canyons doing a robot challenge. So you can see the photos and a story that was published in the local paper about that. Sierra College did some work with a startup group, TechStars, and one of the participants, it seems, has been offered $10,000 in startup funds to develop a prototype for their project, for their product. And last week we had some members of our team traveling. Carol was in New York and visited the newest tech shop, which has just opened in Brooklyn. And so there's some great photos and information about that there. And also Karen Fraser-Middleton was up in Ashland and visited the community college makerspace there. So all of this is on Workplace. I highly recommend that you visit. Also, Salomon and I are posting information, as well as Carol and Karen. So you'll see not only information about what's happening in the maker movement, but also updates that are relevant to our project. So it's the place to be. In our updates, in our community of practice, once again, Workplace. Also, I had sent out last week a link to a Smartsheet form for you to enter your academic calendar dates. And this is because we know everyone has different calendars with spring break and semester dates. Some of you have winter intersessions, some don't, summer sessions, etc. So if you could either fill that out or have one of your great student workers or someone involved in your program fill out that form, it really helps us to schedule. We've got 2 symposia that we're planning for next spring. We're looking at one in Southern California, March 16th at Glendale Community College, and that will focus on work-based learning and internships. And then we'll have another one in Northern California in mid-April at Folsom Lake College with Zachary Dowell. And that will focus on curriculum, interdisciplinary, integrated making, all of that stuff. We decided to have a symposium in the north and the south to save people a lot of time and money in travel. And we will be streaming each of the events and recording, so that if you are only able to attend the one in your region, then you will still have access to the information from the other one. So if you fill out that calendar form and send in your dates, it will really help us to schedule these kinds of events as we move forward through the rest of the implementation phase. And also, just to put on your calendars too, there will be a Maker Ed convening in May of 2018. We will have a discounted rate for CCC Maker colleges, and we will also have some community college sessions built within their program. So that's going to be a new development for next year as well. Salomon has some information on internships.
Hello, everyone. If you haven't reviewed the last two webinars that we've done, I recommend you looking at those because they kind of lay out a little bit of programmatically and as well logistically working with a foundation that many of you will see happening relatively soon. You should be receiving your contracts from Sierra College for the foundation actually early next week. So keep on the lookout for that. But check out the two webinars, and there's been some questions related to onboarding employers, and so we're developing a method to try to do some worksite evaluation visits, which can be happening right now, and that's necessary for some of the risk management aspect to the foundations as you onboard employers and place your students. So those are activities that I recommend that many of you undertake at this moment, prior to any student attending any workplace itself. So we're trying to digitize the form, help everyone out so that you can have some information for reporting later on. Be on the lookout for the contract from Sierra College, as well as a site evaluation form from myself or Deborah that would be digitized. There's already a link to a sample one that the foundation has. It's a paper version you can download and start using, and then transfer some of that information later on as we have the digital version coming up pretty soon. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Salomon. Couple of things that are happening on Workplace. There's a few conversations that people want to get started, and I would really encourage everyone to jump in. Danny Beasley at Laney College is particularly interested in tracking software for makerspace use, and he's experimenting with a particular format. Others may have other systems. I know that Randy at American River College recently developed, or at least one of his students developed some tracking software for their makerspace, and one of the other programs on their campus has adopted it. So you may find that we can adapt from existing software, or we can access systems that have already been developed by other colleges. So we know that Randy is interested in sharing the system he is developing. So please jump on and join that conversation started by Danny. Also, Ron McFarland at College of the Canyons wants to start a conversation about design thinking. And I know that several of the colleges are specifically working on design thinking curriculum. I did a quick search of the quarterly reports, and I saw Moreno Valley is adopting a design thinking approach with modules, and several other colleges are also working. I know the Golden West is also very interested in working with design thinking. Also, Zachary Dowell up at Folsom Lake uses design thinking as part of his curriculum. So that's a conversation we also want to get going. I've included the link here for the sandbox box that Eric Ulrich has set up in Acclaim for our badging, and I would encourage you to jump on with that. I know that Foothill College is also developing a badging system using a different platform, so Acclaim is not your only option, but we know that that's a popular platform, and we would encourage you to get involved in that. Also, in terms of your quarterly reports, just wanted to let you know that we've got almost every college in, and we're looking at the reports at the moment, and I'll be sharing some highlights with you in next week's webinar, because we're looking at some of the data that's coming in. In fact, I was just discussing with Amy some of the numbers in the Kumu mapping, and that's really growing quickly, so that's really interesting. So you'll be seeing some of that coming next week. We'll also be sending you specific comments on what to think about for the next round of quarterly reports and your reporting and information, and some tips to help us process the data once you send it in. Okay, so thanks very much for that. If you have any questions, please enter them into the chat, and Salomon will be tracking that. I'm glad to see that we've got quite a number of people here today. And now I'm going to turn it over to Amy. She'll be running through the rest of the session. And Steve Fuchs from Orange Coast College is with us too, as his Kumu mapping is quite advanced, and he's looking at working on some additional developments using Kumu in the future. So I'm going to stop my screen share at this point, and Amy can jump on. Thanks very much.
Okay, thank you, Deborah. Hello, everyone. It's great to see all the enthusiasm of the weekend. So that's very appreciated. Today, I wanted to revisit Kumu. I know, everyone got their maps going for their application process, and just to revisit it as a tool for your makerspace and your ecosystems development. We know we have Steve on the line he has a pretty amazing map and has been he has some ideas. So what I'd like to do is, if you have questions, there's a certain features that I'm going to share, going deeper into connections, and then also filtering, clustering, and how to use the presentation mode. But I'm really open to hear how you would like to use Kumu. Now that you have a start on it, are there certain features that you would like to use? So please use the chat box. I know Salomon is fielding the questions, and Deborah, is it possible, if we want to promote people, to have a conversation? So if you have like more than just a single sentence question and you want to provide some context or ideas, we would love to hear your ideas. So with that, I think I'll go into screen share and get into, let's see, need to find, that's the thing with Zoom, is to find the actual screen that I want to share. Let's see, there we go. And can you see my screen? I have it on a blog right now. Or do you see the
Yes.
desktop? Okay.
Yes.
Okay, great. Okay, good. Just wanted to make sure. So,
hang on. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm looking at Microsoft Auto Update. Is that right? Yeah.
We don't want that. Let's see. Should. Okay. We'll try this again. How about this one?
Yeah, there we go. That's okay. Will's blog. Yeah.
Yeah, great. Will's blog. So Deborah shared this yesterday. Was that via email or just on the workplace?
I put it on Workplace.
Okay, great. So that's where we can find it. Will Watson, he's been our main person from Kumu who has really helped to develop our templates and how we use maps from the Kumu perspective. And he has this blog. It's in reference to how they're looking at connections in their Compass application, which is an add-on for Slack. But I thought it was really interesting, the different definitions and vocabulary that he had for different people within the ecosystem. So this was an interesting article if you have a few minutes, but to think about how your actors within your ecosystem, how they behave within the ecosystem and what are the best ways to engage people. So for instance, bridges, and in this case, they're the people that can make the connections. A lot of times they would be leaders. This could be your dean, for instance. So I'm going to go through all of this, but this is just an interesting way to kind of look at your ecosystem and the people in it. We have Steve on the line. So this is ecosystem map. So you guys have done just a phenomenal job of making the connections. We'll have Steve talk about this in just a minute. But what I wanted to share was, as you go deeper into your maps, One is to make sure you have your connections. So Steve has a lot of connections on here, which is fantastic. But if you click on the actual connection line, if you click there and then look at, there we go, double click, look at the left-hand side of the screen of the map, and it actually shows what the connection is. So it says nonprofit and OCC makerspace. So that's the connection itself. This is an opportunity, this connection box is an opportunity to start really collecting more data, kind of more qualitative data about what these connections are about. So if you have a shared partnership or if you're doing a shared project or collaboration of some sort, you could actually give some description here. You can add some information on categories. So there's different ways to add to this, to just add some more richness to your connections. And I know Deborah was sharing that there's been an increase in connections and elements. And if we, and just a reminder, so the connections are the lines, and then the elements are the actual, in this case, the little circles that show the data about that partner. So, and again, this is in map view. So if you are visual, this is might be nice to work from here. But if you're more of a spreadsheet type of person, there's also table view. So you can click on that icon there at the lower right-hand corner, and then you can see the different partners in table view. So we have the drones and robotics. You can go through type, description across. You can also toggle on different categories. So industry sector, that will probably be really important as you go into interdisciplinary curriculum, as you're doing internships, to be able to identify which sector you're working with, and it could be more than one. But that would be one that you could go back into. So you could turn on that toggle, click in the cell, just like in Excel. If you do a double click, it gives you a drop-down list that you could check the different industry sectors that are related to that partner. So these are just some reminders. I know when you were doing your applications, it was there was a lot going on, but this is a good way to go back and refine your maps. Deborah, is there anything that and Solomon also, is there anything that you would like to add as far as, what you're looking for in the maps long-term, and areas of opportunity to kind of populate this and fill in some more data?
Yeah, well, one of the things I'd be, and this is just to make life a little easier for us, is use as many of these element types as possible. I think the industry sector is phenomenally important. And if you notice that we've also listed the 4 main outcomes of the project here, I think it's really important to document where your connections lie, because as we've said before, part of Kumu is not only about showing what is strong and what's there, but it's also identifying what may be absent. So it'll show how balanced your ecosystem is if you start toggling on those outcomes. For example, you may be very strong on curriculum, which might be an internal focus, but you may be weaker in work-based learning, which suggests that you maybe need to create more of an overlap between your curriculum and how that's serving your work-based learning outcome. So really think about this in terms of balance. And you don't have to fill out every single cell on every single entry, but I think as you do move further into this, you'll want to start filling out to get the richness of the data. Is there anything? Yeah, sorry, Salam.
Likewise. No, I was going to mention this tool is meant to help you achieve your work plan and your outcomes. And if you see it through that lens, as Deborah mentioned, you want to make certain that you develop it with that intent, that you can identify your ecosystem as a value add to your achievement of your outcomes. If you need 30 employers, 50 employers, 60 employers to generate the internships that you're projecting, then you have a sense of how many more connections you may need, as well as your departments internally. If you're developing interdisciplinary curriculum, how is that connection working out for you, and is it maintained? And those are just some of the things that you could do to look at your map and plan out to achieve your outcomes. And I think that's how I would frame the using of this tool, which is important for the longevity and the growth of your implementation. So it's a really interesting way of looking at your work plan and activities that you're intending to achieve.
Yes, thank you, Solomon and Deborah. Really good points. And as far as, for your work plan, you're planning, but then also to really show the work that you are doing. So for instance, if you have, and I know this was just a general category, let me pick a different one. And Steve, you could probably even speak to this better. So here's your maker project, or the CCC maker project. You could get the industry sector is selected. So as far as the map view that we're on right now, and then we were just on, it might be good, it might be a fun exercise through your elements in map view and see what you have clicked. So it's the same data either way. Look at community of practice, because things might have evolved since you originally did your map. So it's just go back in and give yourself credit. And so just wanted to share those opportunities. One more thing, we'll go back into table view. I wanted to share the connection piece again. If you are more interested in doing the connection table view, if you go into table view, you hit this little icon here in the upper right hand corner, and then just do a drop down list, and you can do the same thing that we were just doing in map view with the connections, but you could do it through table if that's easier. You can also turn on those toggles again. So this would be another good opportunity to show where you have progress work plan, and especially around those outcomes. And so it's just another way to look at it. What I'd like to do is hand it over to Steve for a little bit, that maybe you could share a little bit about how you're developing around how you're planning to use it in planning. Is that correct? Steve on?
Yes. Can you guys hear me?
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. I don't know if I can do screen share properly here, and it seems a little bit slow anyway.
Yeah, and I have your map open, so if you want, I can just keep the screen share, and then and you can talk us through it.
You can just zoom out so we can see the whole thing like in its entirety.
Okay.
So I know a lot of the people that were participating were a little overwhelmed with technology, right? So each sort of system that you have to learn in order to produce something that's of benefit takes some digging in and learning about what it's all about. And then as a designer myself, right, I'm a professor of design, I have to think about what's the end result of the thing that I want to produce. And as I was looking at this, it really, to me, was about the connections to people. I understand we need to stay categorical, and I did use colors to kind of stay organized with that. But for me, the end result is this ecosystem is going to be very useful for me. And, reaching out quickly to somebody, hopefully increasing the amount of connections on campus, and then regionally with our industry people, and then even people within the CCC Maker ecosystem. So knowing that the end result for me was that this is going to be a kind of visual database of our connections, that's where I kind of started here. So all those black dots are people, and everything else was colored was sort of like the hierarchy. And the color itself was just kind of helping me say what was on campus and essentially what was off campus. So everything that's orange is Orange Coast College, and I could kind of quickly see that those were my um, you know, colleagues and or students, interns, this sort of thing. It's kind of funny that this came up and the email was sent saying, hey, you know, could you speak a little bit about this? Because just yesterday we were sitting down thinking about, hey, you know, we need a kind of contact database, and it'd be really cool if we can do this and that. And just because we were working on the website and I was saying, hey, we should link the Kumu map, it was like, oh my God, the Kumu map is already our contact list. Of course it is. And then we thought about like, well, what else could we do with it? And we're actually thinking about, you know, in a makerspace, people have different levels of expertise that they kind of can share, right? Whether it's existing expertise or expertise that somebody developed and maybe they got a badge for. And we thought, man, that would be really cool if we can kind of keep track of some of the badging and expertise levels so that we can kind of see, you know, maybe you could query it for all people that were a certain level on the 3D printer and somebody needed some help. And then there was a way to maybe reach out to them all at one time. Maybe in real time or through a text or sending an email or some platform, maybe like Workplace. Anyway, we're kind of thinking out loud how the Kumu map could be developed to become kind of a daily living ecosystem rather than just a catalog of contacts. So that's kind of where we're at with it. I know originally when we fleshed it out, there was just kind of a need to get the hierarchies going and be categorical. Each of the people have enough information so we can contact them and see kind of the growth of the ecosystem as we start to do our advisory board and have more students come and use the makerspace. So it's definitely a resource we're going to start exploiting even more. You know.
That is really exciting, Steve. And I agree that it's really about the people. Like you have organizations, but most organizations have a champion. That's your main contact that you work with. So I absolutely. About the, so this just happened over the last, I don't know, month and a half. But Kumu added a Slack app to go with the map. So I don't know if that would be something
we already use Slack, so in all my
cases, yeah. Okay. So what we can do is I'll ask about that, and I'll just for anyone on the line, would anyone else be interested in using Slack with their map?
Or you can raise your hands, or you can
raise your hand, yeah,
or you can just chime in on chat.
Right. And Steve, I know a little bit about Slack. I've kind of touched the surface on it, but if you're already using it, do you want to explain what Slack is?
Yeah, so it's really just kind of a news feed, and people can communicate in a group format or one-to-one or in small groups like breakout groups. I really use it. I mean, I know some of us use different platforms for our classes. Like many of you, I'm sort of rebellious to kind of use the power structure at hand. So I just basically say, hey, we're not going to use Canvas or Blackboard. We're just going to use Slack so we can just communicate with each other. So I'll post things and pin things for people, but I can totally see it being, the way to cut across the grain of the campus, to expedite communication. And it'd be interesting if it could add and take away channels based on maybe a query or something. Like maybe there's something going on, there's like a hot topic going on, and you can create a channel for that in Slack. But anyway, it's just a communication platform. It feels like a news feed, and there's channels on the left, and you can decide what those channel categories are. I do find if there's too many categories, they don't get used. So maybe maximum, I have a channel for every class, but the club has a channel, faculty have a back channel where we can make it private. But I think designing how many categories you would effectively use is a kind of an important topic with Slack. I'm interested to see what kind of integration with Kumu there could be. I didn't even think about that, but that seems a pretty rich resource.
Mm-hmm.
I'd love it.
And the nice. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry, Deborah.
Oh yeah, sorry. I was just going to say, student from colleges we've spoken to, Tom Capoletti at Sac City and a few others, students really really like Slack. They take to it very easily. We kind of kicked off a Slack group early in the process, but we found it not everyone gravitated to it, and ultimately it's that is still there. We decided to go with Workplace though because it gave us a little bit more structure so that we could use it more for the technical assistance provider and the community in general, but it's a similar sort of thing. So yeah, Slack is a great tool. I'm just hoping that Kumu then learns to migrate over to Workplace as well. That would seem to be a logical.
You can ask them. They're definitely open. Yeah, they're open to all sorts of new technologies right now and integrations. Oh, that's exciting. What I like about Slack, especially as it relates to ecosystems, especially how you're starting to use it, Steve, is that you could open it up beyond your college class. So Canvas or another LMS is, it's going to be very insular with whoever is enrolled in your class, where this could truly be an ecosystem, and you can bring in other experts and industry partners and alumni. You could really open it up.
I agree.
Timely discussions that you had yesterday.
Can I just make a note? Nick has his hand up. Nick, did you actually want to speak in the conversation, or were you expressing interest in a Kumu question? Oh no, you've just taken your hand down. Okay, right. Sorry, let's keep going.
Okay. So Steve, was there anything else that you'd like to add? What you're thinking about as far as future plans for using it as a tool? Sounds like you have some really good plans underway.
Yeah, I mean, as we're all looking at this particular one, I mean, I've had a look at just about everyone's to see, how they were using it. I think it could be interesting to maybe, and it's hard when you kind of think about standardizing, but I like those categories of the link that you showed, but there seem to be too many there, of course, right? How much could you actually start quantifying when it's that granular? But if there could be like maybe 3 things that we start tracking about, like the type of activity that person, is, are they the go-to person? Are they somebody who is the hermit or whatever it might be? But it'd be interesting to see that here in Kumu. I know when I use other platforms, there's like a visual programming software called Grasshopper. The width or the size of the wires, the connections itself starts to mean something, or maybe there's a way to, in a way almost start badging some of these connections. I'm using color a lot, but if there's a way to maybe, I don't know, develop a certain rim, and that rim means something, and then you have the picture of the person, and if they're very active, that goes maybe a larger size. Things like that are seemingly important to me moving forward. Like integration with badges and the Kumu map seems really, really interesting.
Well, it's interesting that you say that, because just yesterday, Kumu had a new blog that they have started this decoration feature called Flags. And it would be able to do that, where you could actually visually show distinctions within the element. And so Deborah caught that and asked if I wanted to cover it, and I just didn't have enough time to dig into it before our webinar. But I'll forward that to you if that's something you want to play with.
Yeah.
And there is also within the decoration menu, there are a lot of options for the connections using color and thickness of line. So, thanks very much, Amy. You're going there now.
Although, I don't know if this is going to show the decorations.
Maybe not. Yeah.
Yeah. Let me go back out. It's in here. Decorate.
But it actually, what's really cool about the decorations is you can show the relative strength of connections between elements, but you can also use it to show the absence of connections. So you can choose a ghost line to show something that hasn't, I think, is there a broken line or a dashed line? I mean, there's a few
There
different
is.
options. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you can really start to think about, and this is what we're talking about with Kumu, not just being a documentation of what you've already done, but it's actually a planning tool to help you visualize where you need to move next.
The thing that I find is that when I'm sitting down to kind of design the visual, right, is that in the end it's static, right? It's not linked to live information. So if there's a possible way to kind of almost reconstruct the decoration based on a query, that could be really interesting. And you set some rules up where it says, all right, the current state of our database, this is what it is, versus now I'm just building it, right? I'm deciding on a connection or not, but how do I know, like, if there's a lot of communication going on, I would want to know, let's say every week it updates. That would be reasonable, right? Or every day it updates. That could provide me more real-time feedback or quasi-real-time feedback versus I'm just building a system and, you know, who then manages it once you get above 100 or 200 elements, you know, that could be insane.
Exactly. I think that's what they're trying to do with the compass through Slack. So that's what that one blog is about. So that would be, but that's a good point to make it a little more automated. Let me just go back a bit because I know I skipped ahead. So we're on this on decorate. So if you did want to make changes, and Steve, you definitely went advanced on here to do decorations, but you could do that. The other thing I wanted to share was the filter and cluster. So if you want to start doing searches, so let's say you just want to see, you know, who's involved with the CCC Maker project. So what you could do is collect on the elements, select none. So we're going to take all those off. And then we're going to just click on the ones we want to see. So we want to see CC Maker. Let's say, well, we want to see CC Makerspace. So you can start to really customize what you want to see. And then you can go into cluster and cluster by certain categories or types. So I don't want to mess up your map, so I'm not going to go into all that. But I just wanted to show you where those features were. So if you want to go in and start playing, there's some tools there, and you can take a different look at your map.
I know you mentioned going back in there and, you know, infilling data. I know in the beginning I was just like, I just need to see this thing, and I skipped over a lot, right? And some of it was actually kind of hard to understand, you know, and the category or the thing from the drop down maybe didn't exactly apply to what I wanted, so I skipped over it. And like I said, I was trying to get to the smaller black circles to almost make it a contact book. But I think strategizing about the back end categories, I kind of want to use the ones that are there or understand them, but I think adding some categories that I can keep track of and maybe offer to the group as things that are actually useful. You know, I think in the beginning, maybe those categories were set up to help produce reports for you guys, but I think on the ground, like sometimes they're a little unclear, like which one should I select, you know? So I don't know, there's no real guide for each one of those and how they work for you all. And I think if you looked at all of them in total, I actually don't think there's going to be a lot of useful data other than maybe total number of connections like you guys were talking about. Those categories seem a little bit dicey in a way, you know. Maybe they aren't robust enough, or they're too robust. Something about it feels a little messy, and I wasn't sure how to use them really to my benefit, or how it even benefited you all.
Yeah, well, thank you for that, Steve. Yeah, we were working very much in a vacuum, kind of at the beginning of the project. There were a lot of unknowns. So the four things we knew was that we had our major outcomes, and we knew that we had different types of people that would appear within the ecosystem, and we knew we wanted to track by industry sector because that really helps us connect to the Chancellor's Office data.
Sure. Yeah.
So, but yeah, we were very, very prepared for this system to sort of evolve And so the current categories in the table we sent out to everyone was uniform, and we hoped it would enable people to get some information started, and then we would reevaluate where we were and define other categories. The meta map that we're working on creating for the whole system relies on having some fairly consistent categories. So we understand that we had asked that people try to work within the categories during the early part of the project, but we understand that we're going to need it to grow and evolve throughout the rest of the time. So I think we need to kind of develop a strategy for how we add categories or remove categories so that there's a consistency across the college maps. But yeah, we definitely don't want it to be constraining. We don't want it to be something that actually gets in the way. We want to have enough flexibility to allow it to grow and evolve.
So if we're sort of developing on the ground level about some of these things, how do we actually get in there and maybe prune, or I guess you probably wouldn't want us to prune anything, but to add some category and some drop down stuff? I kind of almost forgot about how do we go do that. And I'm sure a lot of people did because they did the assignment and then kind of moved on, right? That might be something we revisit, maybe linking to the tutorial, or if something's been updated, showing us where that might be on the web.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think what I'm thinking, Deborah, is it might be nice to have a call with some of our super users like Steve and others, like a small group to talk with Will and see kind of what our options are. I totally see what you're saying, Steve, and I think for the maps to be able to tell the story of making education and innovation education, like it's not going to fit into the neat boxes that the chancellor's office provided for us. So if we can demonstrate that, I think that's really where it pushes the envelope for education, that we could start to show the interdisciplinary piece with the different connections. I don't know if that's what you had in mind specifically, but
yes, totally.
But yeah, I think we probably have to keep the categories that we have in there for the reporting piece, but we could definitely add to it. And so that might be worth a near future conversation to figure out what that looks like.
I think one of the things would be that if there's a small kind of leadership group with Kumu where you can talk about different categories or ideas that you have about evolving the system, so that each school can then update using the same categories, that would be really, really helpful to us, I think, in the long run. And I think this is a great conversation also to have on Workplace, because it's very easy to share the links to the maps and to have an ongoing conversation about how this can evolve. So we'll be looking for a few people, as Amy said, super users who could lead that. And just so you all know too, at the back of all of this that we're doing, we're thinking very much about where we need to be in a year and a half when the project is over. And we want these connections in this community to continue after the end of the CCC Maker project. So we're always thinking about how do we make this sustainable. And I think the leadership of key people within this community would really help to sustain the work in the longer term. And just one other plug, just from the quarterly reports, when we got your implementation plans, we had 2,788 total elements and connections. And just based on the quarterly reports, we're estimating now that we're at nearly 4,400. So just in the space of the last 6 months, we've added over 1,500 elements and connections. So this is growing quickly, and I think when the Chancellor's office understands the scale and the complexity of the ecosystem that's evolving out of this project, it'll really help us to advocate on behalf of the colleges and this work to help sustain it. So a super user group leading the larger community and everyone engaging with Kumu is going to really show graphically, not just the extent of the community, but how rapidly it's growing. And I think that's really powerful.
Absolutely. No, this has been a really good conversation. I'm glad we kind of kept it open to see where it goes, because it's yeah, it's interesting to see how people are using it, how they'd like to use it, and you know what kind of support we can offer. I know we don't have a lot of time left, so I just wanted to share a couple more kind of features and areas to know where to look on the map if you haven't already discovered these things. So if we go over here to this little wrench here in the settings and click on this, this has some other features where you can, you know, kind of customize things. But one thing I wanted to share is the presentations. So this is a feature, and it will walk you through. I won't go through how to do a full presentation, but it pretty much shows you how to do it. But you can capture different views of your map, different clustering. This could be useful with presentations for your business advisory, industry advisory committees, for your own leadership at your own college, whether that's your dean or you know, board of trustees or wherever you're asked to do this. So there's some interesting features in here to capture your maps. Yeah, we're gonna exit here. So that is one. I'm gonna close out of here. The other one was here. This little icon. I know they're kind of hidden away. Some of you probably already discovered these, but I know it's been a little while since we did the maps. If you wanted to do screenshots or you know, do embed, also the import and export. So if you are working through an Excel spreadsheet or a Google sheet, if you have a collaborative project, here's where you can go to do the import and export. This is something for the meta map that we'll be building. We'll be looking to export each college's maps, kind of clean up the data so it's aligned across the board, and then import it into one big statewide map. So that's, you don't have to worry about that, but that is the future project. I think those were the main things. In the settings, you can look in here if you had other kind of advanced areas that you wanted to address. And then this was back to the cluster, decorate, filter area. That's pretty much what I have for today. I love all the decorations you did, Steve, on your map. Like so this is his actual maker space, and then he went in and added this extra graphics and things. So you know, there's a lot you can do with the map to kind of embed more data, and especially if you're sharing it publicly. So are there any other questions or things that you'd like to see, or you know, ways that you'd like to use the map and maybe be involved in continued conversation around you know, how we use Kumu really to fit the needs of this community?
I think we've had a couple of questions. One is about the macro map from David. Yep, we're working on it.
There was a question also about how we can connect regarding Kumu after this webinar. And I posted a link to our Community of Practice workspace group, which I encourage everyone to share concept ideas, or maybe you can ping Steve a little bit more about how he developed the color scheme and get a conversation going on workplace there.
Great.
Yes, Steve, anything else you want to add before we finish up?
Just want to say thank you guys for continuing to put us through our paces. there's just so much going on, and like being a professor and anybody in academia really, but I've lately just personally been saying to myself, like, all right, I gotta focus on three main things. You know what I mean? And it's been nice kind of onboarding some interns even internally. So some of them were using work study money. Some of them eventually will become part of the grant. Just trying to really look at the resources on campus for those of us that are trying to be as involved as possible with the makerspace, and starting to really delegate a lot of these things to other people. So that's kind of like what we started doing in the first quarter, is looking at what resources we already have. And because of that, two of my interns that are working with me in terms of graphics and just organizing data, they've really been having some interesting conversations with me about where this can be moving forward, especially using the Kumu map. So I guess I'm going to kind of raise my hand and try to be one of those super users, whether I was self-nominated or nominated myself. I think this is a really interesting aspect of what's going on here, because after we're done with the grant, right, we're going to be left with our ecosystem, and that's the thing that we really have to depend on to make this thing sustainable. So
Yeah.
Exactly. No, you hit it. You hit it right on the head, Steve, because that's the whole purpose of this, is to really, have these partners engaged and in place, so that, when this funding goes away, because it always comes and goes in cycles, that you'll have the next thing lined up, and you'll have those partners on board where it's easier to write the grant application, or maybe it's right there from within your ecosystem.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So thank you all for including me, and this is a great little meetup.
Thank you, Stephen. I know you're super busy, especially this weekend. So thank you so much for taking the time to join us. And this is the format that we really want for these webinars, where it's conversational, where members of our community are jumping in and sharing their expertise. So it's not just us talking at you. As we move forward, we'll be tapping more people across the network to jump in. So think about things like doing a video tour of your makerspace, or sharing a particular piece of curriculum that you've done, or these are the kinds of things that we'll be asking of people. So make sure you get yourself a camera connection and an audio connection, so that we can open this up and make it more like an informal meeting. So it's great. So thank you very much, Steve. Amy, Salomon, any other comments at this point?
Just for the contracts next week from Sierra College. So
yeah, the internship train is just about to leave the station, which is really exciting. Yeah.
Exciting for you guys.
Well, that's a key outcome for us. So yeah, no, we're really keen. But thank you very much, and everyone. This will be recorded and posted to the website too, and I'll send out the links in the next couple of days. Amy.
Thank you for hosting this, and thank you, Steve, for sharing your insight and ideas for the future. And so Deborah and Solomon, I'll follow up with you as far as next steps and what we want to do, looking into Slack and other features.
Great, good. All right then, well, thanks everyone. We'll see you on Workplace. If you have any other questions, please send us a message on Workplace or email us, and we'll follow up with you soon. Thanks very much, everyone. Bye for now.
bye everyone.
Bye. Thank you.